Good morning. Welcome back to my channel. If you're a new viewer, welcome to my channel. I am Kyle. Today we'll be doing cavalry tactics like shooting, lancing, and slashing from a moving mount. Here are your timestamps. Let's go over the weapons. Okay, so for the history nerds out there, military buffs, you know that my uniform is not right. I don't have the right shirt. My scarf is the wrong color. My pants are too light. My sword is a cutlass and not a saber. My lance doesn't have a point on either end. And there is no vent plate here to keep my hand from sliding up it. But with that said and out of the way, the U.S. Cavalry lightsaber model 1860 was I believe a 41 inches long, 2 pounds or 3 pounds with the scabbard. The blade itself measured, I do believe so, at 35 or 34 inches. It was made of steel and brass. I think it was in kilogram. No, that its complete length in centimeters, I believe, was 104. And then its weight in kilograms, I believe, was 2 kilograms. I'll be wrong. I'll correct myself in the notes. And this was the primary weapon of the cavalry. Another primary weapon for the cavalry was the lance. The lance had a point in one end and another. And it had a vem plate in the center. Well, not really the center, but on the shaft, which kept your hand from going up it the moment you impaled. But it was not designed for throwing, and it could not handle repeated thrusting like a spear or a pike could, which was usually found by infantrymen. Now that we got, and those were the primary weapons of cavalry. Your secondaries were, oddly enough, your firearms. This is a Remington model 1858 new model Army 44 caliber, 8 inches. Now, this and other revolvers similar to it began a long successful line of medium to large frame revolvers. So, now as you remember from my second video, I showed you how to load it, but I didn't actually show you how to load it. So, with my cylinder in, there are no caps on it, so it's not going to go off. I'm going to rotate it to an empty barrel cylinder. Alright. Oop, I rotated too far. Put it in half cock. Okay. So, right here. No, maybe I should get closer. Here is a 25 grain black powder 3F conical round. I'm going to put it in its empty cylinder. Like that. Give it a little push. Just make sure it's set. Rotate it under the plunger. And then press it in. Alright, give it a little tap. Now my Remington is loaded, but it's, as you can see, there are no caps on the nipples, so it's not just going to go off. There also was another Remington used, and it was this one here. A Remington revolving carbine, although it did not do fairly well. It was outcompeted by the competition, such as Winchester and Henry, as well as the Sharps carbine. It was too underpowered compared to the other ones and had a problem of chain firing. This one, I'm going to show you how to reload the other way. So, I'm going to put this in. We're going to grab my cylinder, drop the plunger, pull out the pin, pull the hammer back slightly. Oh yeah, out of the way. Alright, push the pin in, bring the plunger up, put in half cock. Here's its empty cylinder. This one's going to take a 30 grains black powder, .44 caliber ball. I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to rotate it, drop it under the plunger. There we go. Now my carbine's loaded. The other firearm they used was this Baker style cavalry gun. It's 11 inches, 20 gauge, designed by Ezekiel Baker in Great Britain. It was imported into the US where it was mass produced and manufactured in different caliber sizes as well as lengths. So my right barrel is already loaded. Let's go into the left one. Right here is 60 grains, 3F powder, and 8 .357 caliber balls. Pour our powder in. Get the wedge. This one's going to give me issues, so I'm going to have to do it off camera. Okay, so with all of our weapons loaded, there are no caps on the nipples, so they're not going to go off. And a quick overview of the weapons themselves. Now, what is cavalry? Cavalry is actually a French word that comes from, and I am going to butcher this, so I'm so sorry. Cavalry, like I said, I was going to butcher it, warned you, which is derived from the word cheval, which means horse. So cavalry just means warrior, soldier, who fights on horseback. Now, the dragoons were introduced as a form of mounted infantry. Their job was to ride into where the battle was happening, dismount, grab their rifle, and engage the enemy. But they were also trained to engage the enemy from horseback. So, ride along, shoot your pistol, ride away, dismount, grab your rifle, and then engage again. So, 2 little fun facts before we continue on with the video. Fact 1, there is still a dragoon regiment in the U.S. Army. They are the 1st Regiment Dragoons, or simply 1st Cav. They have been active since 1833. The second one is, the last time U.S. forces led a cavalry charge, it was in the Philippines in 1942. The 26th Cavalry Regiment attacked the Japanese army. Okay, so we have a brief history of the guns. We have a brief history on what the word cavalry means. Now, let's get into some of the drills. One of the earlier tactics, this was used back when Gustav Adolphus was king of Sweden. I forgot. Okay, it's not that I don't know what it's called. It's just I can't pronounce it. But the idea was that one group of cavalrymen armed with pistols would shoot at infantry, ride off, but behind them would be another group of cavalry that would ride in, shoot infantry, then ride off. Gustav Adolphus figured out how to counter this. They would wait for the first wave to fire, and in return, all of the infantry, and he would have reserve cavalry on the edges. I don't have them right now. They would fire their volley into the second one, and then cavalry would charge the remaining 2, because, these 2 are waiting to fire. This one here would be reloading as it's moving into position. So I think I call it a carousel, but it's not a carousel. It's a Corleone. I'll put it down in the spelling. Now this is one we're very familiar with. This is a square. Whoop. Let me get him into his position real quick. Though it's not a cavalry tactic, the square does highlight a lot of weaknesses cavalry does possess. As you can see here, all these muskets are pointing towards this group of cavalry. So even if they shoot as one mass right here in this one little section and eliminate 5 of them, there's a chance that this one might be able to get past, but no one's going to stand in front of a moving horse. So as he gets past, the 3 on the inner will turn their muskets and either shoot the horse and rider, or shoot the rider and then push the horse out. And if you were to ride in a more open formation, like these 6 here, well, as you see, this one row here will take out these 4, and the 2 riding past will still have to go past this wall here. So a square does a lot to negate a cavalry charge. The same as we saw in the previous one where, it was horses running in a circle around a line of infantry. This is more or less lines of infantry running at lines of cavalry running in a square of infantry. Another tactic, you see here we have a line of cavalry charging a line of infantry. The problem is no horse or rider is just going to run straight into a wall of, muskets. So the idea is if I remember correctly, you start at a trot and then go into a gallop, and it's at the gallop when you're close, I shouldn't say close enough, but at a gallop you would draw your sword, and this will either intimidate the enemy into firing too early, which means now they may not have enough time to reload, or they'll fire too late and it won't have as much as an impact. So the idea is for the cavalry to engage the infantry at just the right time to reduce their effectiveness. However, if the infantry is well rested, well trained, well disciplined, it doesn't look very good for the cavalry because they won't be as easily shaken. In rare cases, we do have cavalry on cavalry, but it follows the same problem as cavalry against infantry. No horse or rider is going to charge a wall. The idea is to get the line to break and then wipe them out. So when a wall of cavalry meets another wall of cavalry, there was in one instance during the Napoleonic War where this did happen, both sides came to a complete stop, and it wasn't until a Frenchman took a swing at a Britishman that the battle could continue. So the charge is more of a psychological thing, because if you can disrupt the enemy and break their will to fight, it is much easier for you to achieve victory. So while there's, the line charging the line, there also was an echelon. The echelon worked by charging infantry at an angle instead of directly on. Because if a horse can see that there is a gap between each infantryman, it'll more than likely break through as it rides by. So, because, like we said earlier, if they're not going to charge a wall, but if they can see the gap, they're more than likely to run through it. Now, there's another formation, which it has a historic use, but let me show you the hiccup real quick. King Philip of Macedon invented what was called the wedge formation. And the idea was that when the front leads, the rest will follow. So if he turns left, he'll go left. If he turns right, he will go right. If he chooses to charge straight forward, then we'll go straight through. But first, this horseman has to make a gap between the line of infantry, and then as more of the wedge comes through, because of that gap, the lines get wider and wider, eventually breaking it up. There's a tactic called the hammer and anvil, which I'm going to show that one real quick too, because that one I have a question about. Okay, so in the time of Philip of Macedon, he had what he called the hammer and anvil tactic. The cavalry here, usually in the form of a wedge, would be the hammer. Then you have his infantry, who are pikemen, or they didn't carry pikes, they carried the sarissa. I think I said that correct. You know, they would be right up in front, obviously, because close engagement. How did Philip avoid trampling his men to death when the wedge broke through the enemy line? Now, here's my next theoretical question. Now, let's say, the enemy here, and your guys here, let's say you released your first volley. Okay, great. Now you're going in for a bayonet charge. They're fixed. Okay, great. You clash with the enemy, but at the same time, your cavalry is also coming in. So, how do you prevent casualties on your side due to the friendly fire, but still effectively combat the enemy? Because you can kind of see it. Because I have the enemy here engaging both the infantry and the cavalry. So naturally, as they fire, cavalrymen will be removed. And of course, the enemy will be removed. But, of course, and then your infantry will also be removed. But it doesn't change the fact, let's say if that didn't happen, for some weird reason you're all just terrible shots that day. How do you keep your cavalry from trampling your infantry while at the same time trampling the enemy infantry? It's just a weird theoretical question. If someone does have an answer or a source, please let me know in the comments. Okay, now seeing that we got the drills out of the way, or at least the massive cavalry drills, let's go into the individual drills. And in fact, there was a comment by, he wrote a book called Saber Fencing on Horseback by I have it in my notes, I'll put it up, but I think it's Al-Sulandari. I totally butchered that. Yeah, he said it was more important for you to be a good rider than it was for you to be a good fencer, because if you were dismounted off your horse and you could not engage in combat on foot, then it didn't matter how good of a fighter you were. But if you were a good rider who could not be dismounted off his horse when clashing with the enemy, that made you more dangerous because now you can move faster. Essentially, the horse becomes your legs. And that's why it was made a point. I mean, a lot of people put blinders on because horses are, one, very expensive. They are, I can't say needy, but they do require you to take care of them. So a lot of tacticians suggested don't go for the rider, go for the horse, because you take the horse out of combat. Okay, let's go back to when, infantry versus cavalry. Now, when that line is charging you, don't aim for the riders, aim for the horses. Because if you take out the horses, it's going to throw the rider, and while it does that, it's going to give you time to reload and then engage the rider, who is more than likely armed with a sword and a pistol. Alright, so now that we got that other tactic out of the way, let's go into the individual drills of a cavalryman. Okay, so for those of you who are unaware, I'm not left-handed, but this will come in later. I'm going to take something heavy like this club here. I'll probably do a video on it later. Now, when you're riding on a horse, like I said, you're going to start at a trot, and when you get into a gallop, you want to draw your saber, and then when you get close enough to the enemy, naturally you're going to come back up, you're going to slash up, and then on your right, you're going to slash right, and then you're going to come across, come back across, and as you come up, depending on if you're on your left or right, you're either going to follow through down left, or you're going to follow through on the right. But either way, when you're riding, you're going to go slash, 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 slash. But because I don't have a horse, in fact, I have a motorbike, this is going to be way different. All right, so that's the saber drill. Now let's go on to the lancing drill. Alright, so because lances are different than swords, and as you can see again, there's nothing on either end. When you're riding, when you're impale the enemy, you don't want to come under like this, because what's going to happen is it's going to grab, and now my arm doesn't have very much mobility. So if you are going to thrust, you want to have it wrapped around your arm, but up above. Because when you're riding, you thrust, it comes down, and sweeps out. And when you're engaging infantry, if they come to thrust at you with their musket, you can tuck it under. Actually, no, you don't want to tuck it under either. Because, again, if you do go through them, you got to smack it away and go forward. And if they're behind you, you're going to come up. You're going to go back. If they're across from you, you're going to go like this. You're going to go that way. For some reason, they're behind you. This is when you rotate it this way. Look behind you. Go back. Go forward. Rotate up. Thrust. 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 Go under. Go back. Come back up. Prairie. And you can do the same thing. You could prairie this way, or if you have it like this, you can prairie that way. Either way, if something's coming at you, you want to knock it away from your horse. Your job as a cavalryman is to protect your horse no matter what. And then they had another one that was called tent pegging. And the idea was you would charge a tent peg, obviously, and knock it out of the ground, or pick it up and take it with you, which will cause the tent to collapse on the enemy. In fact, this is a sport, I believe, in England, where if you knock the peg down, it's 1 point. If you take the peg with you, it's 2 points. And this honed the cavalryman's skill to ride at fast speeds, aim, and execute perfectly. So, that's the pike drill. So let's go into the gun. So like I said, I have the wrong gun belt, I have the wrong holster. But if you notice, the butt is pointing out. Why? That's because the cavalry at the time made it, I wouldn't say extremely uncomfortable, but very irritating to want to reach for your pistol. Because normally this would be on your right hand side, and like I said, I'll get to that later. So they had a cavalry draw, which is you would open up your flap, you take your palm, have it face out, because that's how you're going to grab your pistol, grip the butt, come up, and jet out. Now that's easy standing, but I'm going to put this on my bike. When you're riding, it makes a little more sense because it's not as hard. I mean, open. It was just a quick twist. Putting it back, however, is a bit of a nightmare. But yeah, just butt facing up, hand twisted, you pull out, twist back, engage. And then of course, depending on your glove, you might have a little difficulty getting your glove in the trigger guard. But when you're riding, you're going to want to follow through at the right distance. Well, not really the right distance, but at the right timing, because let's say this is your target. You're moving, you're moving, you're moving, hammers back, fire. And by the time you complete passing, the bullet should hit your target. Alright, so I ran you through some of the drills. Now let's put those into practice. In 1913 was the first time we'll see motorcycles have a military use. It was during World War I and a border conflict between General Blackjack Pershing and Pancho Villa. It would also be used again in World War II, where the Germans would mount a sidecar to it, armed with an MG. It would see limited usage in the Korean War, will be eventually replaced by machine gun mounted jeeps. And then it will appear again in Afghanistan by the Taliban, who used dirt bikes to coordinate mortar strikes, and is actually being used in the British Army by the British Grenadier Guards, but as quad bike trainings. So, do you want to shoot with large caliber guns? Do you want to go really fast around the battlefield? Do you want to sneak? You want to do cool guy shit? Do you want to be Batman? Well, welcome to the cavalry. Let's get started.
All right, here we are. As you can see, I have my target set up. I have 5 balloons. However, I've loaded 6 into my revolver. My carbine only has 3 shots, and then my shotgun, of course, has 2. As you can see, I'm out of uniform. I don't have my hat. I don't have my jacket. My pants most definitely are not right. But so, this is the plan. I'm going to take my motorbike. I'm going to drive through here, shoot across from myself at these 3 targets, and then on the way back, I'm going to shoot with my arm extended out. At least that's the plan anyway. As you can see, I have my eye protection on and my hearing protection in, because safety first. All right, let's do this. Okay, so for dragoon training, let's just say I rode up, I dismounted, and now I'm going to engage the 3 targets, which as you can see are these 3 balloons. So, let's do that. Well, I got 2 out of 3. So my first pass, I'm assuming what happened is when I was bouncing, that the little spring here that holds the plunger in place, here, I'm guessing it came loose because it dropped on me, keeping me from rotating the revolver, well, the cylinder. Which when you saw what happened, when I stopped right there, I put it back in, then I continued driving, and got all of them but 1. 6 shots, 5 targets, hit 4. Maybe the cavalry's not meant for me. But you know what? This was fun. I enjoyed it. It was way more successful than the last time. So, cavalry's role today, even though we no longer use horses and very few of them use motorcycles, is they are the eyes and the ears of the battlefield. Their main job is to report enemy movement and also information upon the enemy to the higher ups, as well as guide tanks through difficult terrain. So even though we no longer use horses or motorcycles, cavalry today still has a very important role in the military. So, I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, have a beautiful day.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like button. If you have any suggestions or criticisms, leave a comment. And if you want to stay tuned for my next project, don't forget to click that subscribe icon and ring that bell. So, until our next project, have a beautiful day.